all. Thank you so much for taking time out of this busy season to join us for today's live chat. My name is Lakelyn Hogan. I'm the Caregiver Advocate with Home Instead Senior Care. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We have a great topic today, so I'm excited for the great questions that will come in. And our live chats are brought to you by Home Instead Senior Care, a family network of locally owned franchise offices, and your trusted home care agency, helping you keep your aging loved ones in their homes as they grow older. So before we get started with the chat, I wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. First of all, we have you all on mute, and that's just to reduce the background noise. We want you to be able to still move about your house while listening, talk to the other people in the room if needed. Feel free to do so because we won't hear you since you are on mute. And then if you have questions, we urge you to write those questions to us in the chat box on your screen. And any questions that you have regarding the topic for today, or really any questions in general, we're happy to answer them for you. And then don't worry about taking notes. We will email you a link with the recording of today's webinar. So if you either missed it or really liked the chat and wanted to send it on to a relative, you'll get that link via email after today. So be looking for that in your email inbox. But again, thank you for joining us. I'm really looking forward to today's topic, one that I get questions on a lot, and that's balancing independence and safety. It's a very delicate balance. You don't want to compromise your loved one's independence, but you also want them to be safe. So we're going to talk about kind of that, that parallel there. So I want to welcome back our expert for today, Karen Garner. Karen was a caregiver for her husband, Jim, who had younger onset Alzheimer's disease. Jim recently passed away, but Karen continues to share her family's experience through her advocacy work. She works to encourage and support family caregivers affected by Alzheimer's disease. And Karen is a mother of two, which keeps her very busy. And she's also the founder of the Garner Foundation. And you can read more about her experiences as a caregiver at missingjim.com and on our website, helpforalzheimersfamilies.com. So Karen, thank you so much for coming back and joining us today to talk about balancing independence and safety. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lakelyn. It is completely my pleasure, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be good to yourself, to listen to this broadcast, because obviously you're recognizing the need to get some help and get some input, and I just want to commend you for doing that. And Lakelyn, I want to thank you again for such a wonderful introduction. I have really enjoyed this past year doing these live chats with you and getting to hear feedback and really connect with so many people really all over the world, because we do get questions not just from the United States and Canada, but from all over the world. So thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this.
Well, we're so happy to have you, and I can't believe a whole year has gone by since we started doing these live chats together. So time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
Well, we had some great questions that came in. We asked our Facebook following to write in some questions. So if you're listening today, you're still trying to think of a question, don't worry, we have a few we're going to start with. But again, don't hesitate to write your questions in the question box there, and then I'll see them on my end, and we'll get your questions addressed. But when it comes to again, that balance of independence and safety, we had a question come in from Anne, and it's about having a pet in the house. And I know that for so many, animals are a source of comfort. For a lot of people, you know, it's man's best friend to have a dog, that sort of thing. But sometimes it can also pose a safety hazard. So Anne asks, we got a dog a year ago. My husband is 85 and has early to moderate Alzheimer's. I'm thinking about adopting the dog out as it has just given me more work and constraints. Am I feeling justified in this way? Are there any suggestions you can give me? So Karen, I thought we would maybe start with that one.
Oh
Any
gosh,
thoughts on that?
I do. I really do. And thank you so much. And I really appreciate you taking such great care of your husband. I know day in and day out, it's a really difficult task. So I'm going to give you 2 points of view that I would like for you to think about. One, the point of view from your husband, who obviously you love very, very much, and what the dog does for him. I'm not really sure, based on just your question, does he spend a lot of time with the dog? Does the dog come up and sit with him and he pets him? When he gets up in the morning, does the dog greet him and give him something to look forward to or something to focus on? Is he still able to get up and out of the house to walk the dog? Because in the past, we've had people who had a really hard time getting their loved ones that they were caregiving for to get up and exercise, and sometimes having a pet, especially a dog that needed walking, that would help with that. Um, so I'd really like for you to answer, just some simple questions as far as thinking about, what kind of interaction your husband has with your dog, and how much the dog helps him get up and have something to look forward to each day, and so forth. So put your perspective glasses on from that point of view. Now, on the flip side, I hear you. You're saying that the dog's giving you more work and constraints. I know if you leave the house, you have to find somebody to watch the dog if it's for a length of time. You have to worry about cleaning up after the dog and taking them to the groomers or to the vets and getting the dog food and making sure that the dog is let outside. There's just a lot that goes along with having a dog. And you already are, I'm sure, overwhelmed taking care of your husband. So the real key that I would like for you to be honest with is how much of a burden on you is this dog? Is it a nuisance? Is it a well-trained dog? Is it just really causing you a lot of stress? And my guess is yes, otherwise you wouldn't have taken the time to send us this question. So I'm going to come back to you and say, is the stress this dog causing you um, more stress to you than it is help to your husband, and sort of weigh which one is worse than the other. So I really feel for you because, we have 2 young children and they really wanted a dog. And while Jim was very sick and he was home, we got a dog. We got a border collie. And the border collie was actually pretty well trained when we adopted him. He was 6 months old. But I was working full time, and so the dog was home with Jim all day, and the dog became untrained very, very quickly. Now he is a lovely dog. He's wonderful, um, but he did become quite a nuisance in the sense that he just was no longer trained to come when we called him and so forth, because Jim just let him get away with whatever he wanted. That being said, Jim would walk the dog about 20 times a day. He would come in from a walk, he would look around the house, not have anything to do, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm going to go walk the dog." So it helped Jim get up and out of the house and get exercise and get fresh air. People in the neighborhood knew him and knew the dog and would look forward to seeing him. And if he was too far away from home, or they felt like it, or they wanted to make sure I knew where he was, they would call me or send me a text to let me know. So for me, it was a burden. I was taking care of Jim. I was working full time. I had 2 kids also I was taking care of. And then we added the dog. So I thought many, many times, just like you, Ann, like, what in the world was I thinking? And I should get rid of this thing. It's more trouble than it's worth. But for me, um, having somebody, even though it wasn't another person, here with Jim all day and keeping him company was worth it to me. Now, your husband is older, he's 85, so I don't know how agile he is, if he is able to go out on these walks. And if the dog jumps up on him and he scratches him, is he bruising easy? Is he on some kind of medication that, thins his blood and causes him to get cut easy? There's a lot of little tiny factors that only you can answer. And if those all are part of the case, then you very well could look into adopting the dog out. Maybe you have a friend that can take the dog for you for a week or two and see what kind of impact it has on your husband. And if you just feel a weight's been lifted off your shoulder and you don't see any change in him, then you might want to think about permanently adopting the dog out. If you feel like that is in the best interest for you and your husband, and possibly for the dog too. Let's not forget, you may be able to find a lovely family that will actually be able to take care of the dog better just because they don't have an 85-year-old that they're trying to take care of. So it's a great question, and if you wouldn't mind, shoot us an email back and let us know what you decided to do. And if you have any other questions about it, please feel free to let us know. But that's a great question.
Karen, and I think that was a great answer. I liked your suggestion of, having a family or a friend, a family member or friend take the dog for a few weeks and see how that changes the dynamics in the home. I think that's a great suggestion. So we just had somebody write in regards to another safety concern, and we've talked about this in a previous live chat. I feel like it always comes up, but wandering. So Nancy, she just wrote in, I'm torn between putting my husband in a safe place or continuing to worry if he's going to wander. Another problem is his temper. I feel like I'm walking a thin line and the stress is getting overwhelming. So any thoughts there, Karen?
Well, yes, there are lots of thoughts, as I'm sure many of you have. First of all, Nancy, I have been exactly where you are. Obviously, I don't know you and your exact situation, but I do know the agonizing feeling of trying to decide what to do. And Jim did have, my husband Jim had a very violent outbreak. I fortunately wasn't there, and that probably was part of the problem. But I did have to worry about that temper and another outbreak, especially in front of the kids. And then also I had to worry about him leaving the house. He was very physically fit, and we did have him actually break away from us when we were coming home one night. It was dark, and he just bolted. He just ran down the street quickly out of sight. And my, at the time, 10-year-old son went running after him before I even knew what was going on. And so then I had to worry about my son and my husband, and it just, I can feel you. So my whole point of telling you my story is just to let you know I do understand this is very stressful. So without having any more information other than just how you're feeling stressed, you're worried about your husband, and I think you're worried about your stress level because you're saying it's getting overwhelming, which is very understandable. So one thing I want to talk about here, as you said, a problem is his temper. So that can be very dangerous for you. And I don't know how old you are, how old your husband is, but if he gets violent with you, he could really hurt you, and that would really be cumbersome. Not just because we don't want you to get hurt, but in the future you wouldn't be able to take care of him anyway. So, so it's very, very important that you take care of yourself. And if you feel like you are in danger, or that you can't see when his temper's coming, or when you feel like he's getting agitated, there are some things you can do. One, you can talk to his doctor. There are medications to get him on. I don't know if he is or not, but there are medications to put them on. I'm not a huge advocate of medicating somebody up, but when it comes to them getting agitated and getting violent, I think it's very important. Safety comes first. So I would definitely make an appointment, or at least call in to his physician. He should have a neurologist, I'm guessing. I would talk to them. If he already is on a medication, then you still would need to call them and let them know that that medication isn't doing its job. Now, when it comes to his temper, you also have to be careful if you are changing his location. So if you're thinking about placement, which is what I got from your question, and I could be wrong, but if you are thinking about placement, that is something they're going to ask you, especially if it's a locked unit, which it will be if you're worrying about him wandering. Um, they take they take the safety of all of their residents very seriously, and so that might cause a problem for your husband even being able to go into a home. So that is something you really need to get a handle on very quickly, not just for your safety, but for placement in the future as well. Now, with the wandering, um, there are some things you can do around your house. You can put alarms on the doors. You can lock him in. I don't know how capable he is of unlocking versus locking. You can try to have somebody come and stay with him during the day if you're not there, or even sometimes when you are there, just to keep him company, and try to figure out possibly why he is wandering. There's lots of ways to look online, but if you have ever been able to get a copy of Confidence to Care, which Home Instead published, Molly Carpenter was the author. It actually has some great suggestions that I utilized when Jim was at home with me, because I was concerned about that. Part of it is trying to figure out why they are wandering. Are they in pain? Are they hungry? Did you recently move and they're trying to get back to their old house? If you are capable of sitting and talking to them and having a conversation to try to figure that out, I would definitely do that. Is their eyesight giving them a fit? Sometimes what happens when our loved ones that we're caring for get scared, or they can't see as well and they're not sure where they're at, or they get confused, that's when they wander a lot. It's not because they don't like you or they don't like where they're at. Sometimes they don't know where they're at. So it's a matter of really being an investigator and trying to figure it out. Giving them something to occupy them. Do you have some games, or something, a comfortable, warm, dry place for them to sit? Can you redirect them to help maybe fold the laundry or put a puzzle together, or even a show on TV? I'm also not a big advocate of just sitting them in front of the TV, but sometimes that's what you need to distract them. Or maybe some music, or reading them a book. If it gets really bad, if you need to run to the store, or maybe the leaves are changing or something. Right now it's holidays. Maybe you can go look at some holiday decorations, get them out of the house, and take them for a car ride. And it's nice to get them some exercise too, if you're able to go ahead and take them outside and go for a walk around the neighborhood. Like I mentioned in the previous question, Jim loved going out and taking the dog for a walk, and just love taking walks and getting outside. I mean, nobody wants to sit inside all day. So I would also like to ask you about your day-to-day activities and what your schedule is. Do you have the same schedule every day, and are you getting him out of the house on a regular basis? Do you have people coming to visit? Is it a chaotic home environment with a lot of people coming and going, or is it a nice, serene, calm, peaceful one? Because sometimes if there's a lot of loud noises, or even bright lights, there's any little thing, it's really, sometimes, like I said, it's hard to figure out, could set them off where they just want to get out of there. And the night that Jim ran away like that from us, after I got him back home and he calmed down and I talked to him, I said, "Where were you running to? Why did you run away like that?" And it was the most heartbreaking thing. He said, I don't want to be sick anymore. I just wanted to run away and get away from the disease." And obviously, that was really hard for me to hear, and there was nothing I could do to help him with that. I just had to be very aware of where he was at all times once that did take place, and I knew that it was a possibility. So there's two different issues here. Going back, I'd really like for you to focus in on his temper for your safety and for his, and then also for the wandering. And they could be related. If you're worrying about him wandering and he's showing temper, there could be something bothering him. He could not feel good. It could be something as simple as a headache or a sore throat, or maybe even, I mean, something as very simple as the shirt he has on, the tag is rubbing his skin and itching him, or just being annoying. So there's a lot of different factors that could go into it. I would definitely recommend talking to his doctor, and also reaching out to your local Alzheimer's association. Um, they might have some groups that you could take him to, and some suggestions for your specific area where you live. I'm not sure where you live. Um, and then also, I know here where we live, our local sheriff's department has a program where you can register with them, and there is something you can put on the wrist of your loved one that you're caring for. And that way, should they run away, they have their photo already, they have all of their pertinent information, and it makes it much quicker and easier should they get lost and you don't know where they are, for the police or the sheriff's department to come in and help. So there are some things like that that would just give you some peace of mind, besides doing the things around your house that you can do as well. So please let us know how it goes, Nancy, and I hope that this has helped you.
That is a great answer. If you are just joining us, we are still taking questions. I know Karen just addressed wandering, and she gave some great resources. And if you have more questions, please feel free to chat them in there. And Karen, I also wanted to add, Home Instead just came out with a Prevent Wandering public education program, and along with it, the Missing Senior Network, where you can go online, create an account for yourself, and then and add all of your contacts in, so family members, friends, maybe the local church, places that your loved one might wander to, and then in the event of a wandering situation, through this website, you can put one message out to all your contacts to alert them that your loved one has gone missing and give some additional details. So again, that's the Missing Senior Network. If you just type that into Google or go to missingseniornetwork.com, you can find that other resource. So I think you brought up some great points there, Karen, and I like those resources and wanted to share just one more. So thank you. Okay, so I know the topic for today, if you're just joining us, is balancing independence and safety. So we had Beverly write in, and I think that this is kind of a unique question that ties to our topic that I probably would have never thought of before. But she asks, my husband is in moderate stage, and he is thinking of having foot surgery, and he'll be off of his feet for 8 weeks. I've heard something like that can cause them to decline. Is that so? I think before I turn it over to you, Karen, I think that this is an interesting question because, while the foot surgery might help improve his mobility and improve his quality of life, could it also at the same time compromise his independence, at least in the short term, or like she's asking, is this going to cause even more decline? So a tough question, but an interesting one that ties to our topic. Karen, any thoughts from you on that?
Well, I always have thoughts and input, and this is actually is a fantastic question because I don't hear about this enough. I did hear about it every so often when I was caring for Jim, and it is true. There are things that can cause a decline, and I am assuming, and I don't know, but with this foot surgery, that he might possibly be put under anesthesia. Now, if that's the case, then the likelihood of it affecting him in a way that would cause his dementia to progress is a very, very high possibility. There actually have been some studies done on this very thing, and it seems to be pretty common knowledge in the medical field that the more surgeries and times that they go under, the more likely it is that it will progress the disease. Now, that being said, when you meet one Alzheimer's patient, you meet one Alzheimer's patient. So this is by no way, shape, or form a guarantee that it will cause him to decline, but the likelihood is definitely there. I would strongly suggest speaking not only to the, I'm guessing it's an orthopedic surgeon of some sort, whoever's doing his foot surgery, but also to his neurologist and weighing your options. Basically, is the foot surgery worth a decline? Is it not? Is he in a lot of pain? Is he not? Because not only will the anesthesia cause a decline, but him having whatever's wrong with his foot could actually cause a decline too. Being in pain, having some kind of problem with it, that causes him to fall. Falls are a huge, huge reason to see progression of the disease as well. So that would be something that you also have to take into consideration. Is you said he's in moderate stage. My question to you is, will he be able to sit for 8 weeks and stay off of his feet? If you explain to him he had surgery, will he remember he had surgery, and he'll be able to help take care of himself or follow doctor's orders? So it's not just a matter of the actual surgery. It's a matter of the 8 weeks. That's a long time afterwards that you'll be able to keep him off his feet and taking care of himself. So those are things, obviously, without knowing where he's at, to definitely take into consideration. But unfortunately, all of the data that I've seen, and you can go online and look it up. Again, I strongly encourage you to speak to his physicians because they know him and I don't. But definitely that is something that could cause a progression of the disease.
Karen, thank you so much for that great information. What a tough decision that Beverly has to make, but Beverly, we wish you the best of luck and hope that you can find the solution that's best for you and your husband. So Karen, kind of shifting gears a little bit, speaking of doctors, we've actually had a lot of people write into us about questions about doctors, about treatment. We had one individual, Yvonne, write in, what kind of doctor should I take my husband to for the best treatment? I know you've been talking about, a neurologist. So maybe speaking from your own experience or from those families that you've interacted with, if someone has Alzheimer's or dementia, what kind of physicians should they be seeing? What kind of medical care should that individual be getting?
And that is a good question. And actually, that's something that is really a hot topic right now. There are some bills that we are putting forward to our Congress, actually, to try to get more help in the early stages, so that people basically have, similar to what you would have if you have cancer and some other ailments, where you get a team with a social worker and financial advisor and things like that. So, so not to go off topic, but just to let you know, this is a very hot topic right now. It's something that we're all aware of that's not necessarily consistent across the board. And depending on where you live will depend on what kind of care you get. So obviously, I'm not sure where you're located. So I'm going to start with telling you a little bit about what we did and then what some other options are. So Jim started with his primary care physician, and it was, of course, he wasn't diagnosed for quite a while, but his primary care physician sent him to a neuropsychologist for testing. He went and got testing with sleep apnea, which he didn't have. And he went to a internist to check, for blood problems and things like that. And then his primary care physician also ordered some scans. When all of those came back negative, he eventually referred him to a neurologist. Now, the neurologist that we were seeing originally just was not familiar with younger onset, and he didn't know where to send us to. He had never really dealt with anybody Jim's age and with young children at home, and so we ended up switching neurologists and practices. We went to a whole new practice, and so that might be something that you have to do. But the best thing that we did was we participated in a diagnostic study. It was not a clinical trial because Jim was too young to participate in a clinical trial, but a diagnostic study at the National Institute of Health up in Bethesda, Maryland. And that was phenomenal. And they did a lot of tests over several years, and we got confirmation of what was wrong with Jim. And they gave us some suggestions there. Now, that was not going to be his primary care physician, though, to treat the Alzheimer's. They gave us no actual treatment there. So what we had to do was find a physician back home that we were comfortable with. Now, the physician that we had ended up being great. He stayed up to date on Alzheimer's and younger onset, but I have talked to quite a few people who drive a little bit further away than we did. We would drive 40 minutes to our doctor's appointments, and they actually drive over 2 hours to the University of Virginia, which has a phenomenal department there. Some other people drive the next city over, and it takes them about 40 minutes as well, because they found a neurologist that they are comfortable with. Typically, somebody with dementia sees a neurologist. Now, not just any neurologist. In the field of neurology, there are different doctors that basically focus on specific things. Some may focus on migraines, some may focus on Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, some may focus on strokes. There's a lot of things that neurologists take care of. And what you want to do if you find a practice, a neurology practice, is you would like to ask them who is their best doctor for whatever form of dementia your husband has. Has he been diagnosed? I'm not sure, that he has, based just on your question. So if he hasn't been diagnosed, that's a place to start. And it is a long process. That also being said, I highly recommend, if you are at all possible and your husband is willing, to try to participate in clinical trials. They always treat you very well. You get a lot of information, and you're helping others, and you're helping the medical and scientific field try to find a cure. They are having problems with certain clinical trials getting enough participants, which is really sad, because there's 5.5 million people in the United States with some form of Alzheimer's, so you would think they would have plenty of participants, but unfortunately that's not the case. So one of the things that I really thought we did well was to participate at the NIH in that diagnostic study. And if at all possible, if you live close enough to one or you're able to travel to one, I recommend trying to do that as well. But the main thing you need to do is to start with your primary care physician, who should refer you to a neurologist, and go from there. But definitely make sure the neurologist is somebody who specializes in whatever form of dementia you are, dealing with. So that's a great question. Like I said, it's a hot topic, and that's the best place for you to start.
Karen, thank you for that information. And I recently was sitting down with some individuals from our local Alzheimer's Association here, and it sounds like there was some sort of legislation recently passed that allows Medicare, which is the largest probably payer of healthcare for those 65 plus, so this wouldn't have applied to your husband, unfortunately, but for those 65 and older using Medicare as their payer source for their healthcare, the physicians can now spend extra time with individuals diagnosed with dementia. So if a physician diagnoses, then they'll have extra time to spend with the patient. So I think that that is a real win for this and this disease is so often people feel rushed at the physician's office when they're sitting down to talk about a diagnosis and treatment or you know, the resources and all that that's available to them. So now that they'll have more time with the physician. So I can't remember off the top of my head what that piece of legislation is called, but if you happen, if you're listening out there and happen to hear that in the news, that is an exciting step forward for Alzheimer's.
Actually, I think it's called the Caregiver Act, but I could be wrong
Really?
about that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I'm
is
not
one.
entirely sure.
Yeah, and it's one that Homestead and the Alzheimer's Association and Us Against Alzheimer's all have worked strongly to make happen. So it's really exciting to be part of that.
Absolutely. Well, we did have one another question come in. This question comes from Paul, and he kind of tells a little story, and then his question's at the end. So I'll just read pretty much word for word. He says, "Our family has been discussing finding an assisted living facility for my father, who has been diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's dementia. We visited several nice facilities, but the administrators at each felt he isn't ready for that yet. He's really good for the first 10 to 20 minutes with someone new, so they aren't getting a full look at the considerable lapse of memory from repetitive conversations." He said, "Are there general triggers that we should be looking for that would indicate that he needs full-time care? Most of the tenants at the facilities are in pretty bad physical and or mental shape, and I'm concerned his condition will worsen if he goes in too soon." And then he said, as a follow-up, "My concern is that he would become depressed or withdrawn since he wouldn't be interacting very much with the other people living there." And I think that that is a great question. I think that question probably goes through the minds of a lot of family members that are caring for a loved one. So again, his question was, are there general triggers that we should be looking for that would indicate that he needs full-time care or a move to an assisted living facility?
Well, that is a great question, and this is very common because, as I mentioned earlier, taking that step is huge. Um, you know, there's just a lot to trying to move them, let alone finding a place. So, as far as triggers, a trigger, I'm not sure is the right word here that we're talking about, and maybe I'm not understanding it correctly, but what you're talking about basically is a symptom or at some point that they get, because a trigger to me is something that sets them off, like with agitation or violence or confusion and so forth. So, which would be maybe something in your house that triggers them to um, get agitated or to think about something from a long time ago. That's what I'm thinking a trigger is. But if you're asking me basically a symptom of when they're at the point that it's time to move them. Some people never move out of their homes. They bring help in, or sometimes, God bless them, the wife or the husband do it alone, and I don't know how they do. But sometimes they bring nurses in and get help in the home. For us, Jim needed to go, one, because of our young kids coming and going all the time. It just wasn't conducive to him having a environment that kept him happy. With us coming and going at different times and not having the same schedule, and sometimes they could be loud, and that would agitate him and get him confused and cause him a lot of problems and stress. Also, our home wasn't conducive to keeping him there because our bathroom and our bedrooms were all on the second floor. And as he was declining and was becoming more feeble, I was very, very concerned about him falling down the stairs. So our home wasn't conducive to having him stay there. So those were two of the main factors. Also, I was very worried about that agitated aspect that could come into play in front of the kids. And I was trying to just figure out what would be best for Jim and for the kids. And so moving him into a home was what we, ultimately decided to do because of those. So I'm wondering if your home is conducive to allowing him to stay there. If you can have help come in, if that would make you happy. And I understand, they can go to a doctor for a few minutes, and or even somebody can come visit and they carry on this great conversation, and they're looking at you like you're crazy, like nothing's wrong with them. Why do you think something's wrong with them? But first of all, doctors have seen it all and they know. And if you feel like you need to, you can call them ahead of your scheduled appointment to let them know some things that are going on at home if you are worried that they don't understand. That's very common as well, because I know a lot of times one of my complaints with doctors' offices is they don't talk to the caregiver alone. They always have the person in the room with them. And sometimes it's very uncomfortable discussing all the things that are going on at home in front of the person that you're talking about. It seems kind of cruel, in my opinion. So anyway, so I hope I have answered your question. It is a great question because, again, just like we've already mentioned several times this hour, it's very, very difficult to make that decision on if they should stay home or if you should move them, because sometimes moving them can cause a decline as well. They get out of their comfort zone, they're around new people. Now, you also mentioned you were worried about them being isolated. Jim was less isolated in his home because there were so many people that lived there and took care of him, and he would walk the halls and sit and eat dinner with them. And we would come to visit, but there was always so many other men. It was separated men and women, and they did a lot of activities, actually more than I could have done with him on many days. So that part was very nice. And I think that was really good for him. And he didn't have a problem with it. He moved right in and got settled and seemed very happy and comfortable there. That's not always the case with every person that moves into a home. Sometimes they don't like it there and they keep asking to go home. And it's just pure torture to have them ask you that and to leave them there. And so it is a big question. And I don't know, Lakelyn, do you feel like I've answered the question based on what they were asking?
Yeah, with Alzheimer's disease, you said it earlier, when you've seen one person with Alzheimer's, you've seen one person. Every case is so different, every situation is so different. So it's really hard to say, if X, Y, and Z happens, that's the time that you need to move them. It really does depend on the safety of the environment that they're currently living in, the family situation. Paul, I'm not sure what your family makeup is like. Maybe you're the only child, and maybe you do or don't live in the same community as your loved one. Some families, they have, grandkids that can come over and spend time with their loved one. They can kind of build a schedule with the existing family. Sometimes to supplement, they'll bring in home care agencies like Home Instead to kind of fill the gaps where the family can't be there. So, what's the environment like? What's the family makeup? What's the financial? Is it financially feasible to bring in home care to the home? In this case, maybe even a couple times a week to start. Maybe to get him engaged in activities might be good. But if it gets to a point where, financially that's not feasible, then it might be a good idea to move. So there's all sorts of dynamics that makes this decision so complicated. And I wish there was a one-size-fits-all answer. But if I know HomeInstead.com, or sorry, Home Instead has a sister website, CaregiverStress.com, and on there there's a great home safety evaluation. So Paul, if you're looking to evaluate the home where your dad is currently residing, that's a great tool. And then if you're looking for some care right now for your father, there's again, home care resources, and if that's unaffordable to your specific situation, there are grant programs like Clarity for Charity out there. So there are a lot of resources out there that can assist you at this time, because it sounds like your dad is still at home. But when it comes to making those decisions, I think Karen brought up some great points, um, and hopefully that will help you, Paul, in that decision-making process. But I know, Karen, you had just mentioned that if you move somebody into a community or nursing home, assisted living, that type of situation, sometimes they thrive and they do really well. Sometimes they're asking to go home. They're feeling miserable, and that can provide um, some significant emotions for not only the individual living at the community, but also for the family caregiver. They might feel guilt or stress. And we had a question related to that came in um, from Tina, and she said, "My husband's on Medicaid in a dementia care unit, and has repeatedly said that that he has become one of them, meaning that those in the wheelchair who get fed and will never leave. He's very aware of his surroundings and now keeps talking that it's time for him to go, but he doesn't want to leave me behind. He says he's the only one, or he only has little time left, and maybe even just a few months. Any suggestions? The home is understaffed. Um, he doesn't get enough one-on-one care, and she tries to go there at least 4 days a week to help him with his meals." So it sounds like Tina's husband is a little more aware of his surroundings, and is feeling like he is kind of stuck in this place. Any suggestions? I mean, I'm sure that's so heartbreaking for Tina to have to go there, and it might be the best situation for her husband because he might physically be unable to be at home. But anyway, Karen, any thoughts on that? That one broke my heart when I
Yes.
when I read it. Pardon me.
Oh my gosh, it breaks my heart too because unfortunately, this is much too common of a problem. And, places being understaffed, people not getting the attention that they should get or that they deserve to get. Frankly, these people that are in these homes, including Tina's husband, they deserve to be treated with respect and have some attention paid to them. And it sounds like Tina's doing an amazing job by going and so many times a week and staying for a couple of meals to help out, because not only is she helping her husband out, she's helping the other patients, because that's one less person that the completely overwhelmed staff is having to take care of. So when she comes, she's helping the other patients as well. So Tina, first of all, my heart goes out to you because it is very hard to leave them like this, and for your husband to be aware of what's going on and talking about it. What I want to say to you is it's not your fault. There's a lot of guilt that comes along with being a caregiver, and there's a lot of heartache that comes along with being a caregiver, and you have to be really strong. And it looks to me like you are a very strong person. And when he talks about being left behind or he's become one of them, my guess is he's scared. Obviously, he still has enough wherewithal in his brain to know what's happening and what's coming, and that can be very scary to him and to you. And so I'm not sure how you're reacting when he says this, but there's two ways. Obviously, you can just acknowledge the elephant in the room and say, honey, you're right, and I'm really, really sorry this is happening to you. And I miss you when I leave here. I think about you all the time, and I wish it wasn't like this, but I would do everything I can to take care of you. And just reassure him that you do know what's going on as well. He's not imagining it, because, if he does have a form of dementia, which I'm assuming he does, since he's in a dementia care unit, at certain times he might be confused and not understand why he's there, or he may feel very at home there. Throughout the day, he could go through 1,000 different scenarios in his head of what's happening in his life, and none of them may be accurate, because that's how dementia is. And so when he does have these moments of clarity and he does say these things to you, based on your relationship with him and how he's doing at that point, you know, like I said, you could be very honest with him and let him know how it's affecting you and that you're not going anywhere. You will always come back to visit him and you're doing the best you can, and ask if there's anything that could make it better for him. You know, is there something that he would like to change in his room? Is there, you know, music that he would like for you to bring him, or maybe some books? You know, I'm just not sure what he's capable of doing at this point, but it sounds like he does have some, you know, something left in there. Are you able to take him out of the dementia care unit and go to other parts of the building or even outside for walks? Are you able to bring a bird feeder? Like if they have an outdoor courtyard area, can you bring a bird feeder to Phil so maybe he can sit and watch the birds? I just, you know, not knowing everything specific to your situation, these are just some suggestions. Now, on the flip side, if you're not comfortable acknowledging what's going on or you don't think it would be good for him, you know, you can try to change the subject, basically just, you know, trying to get his attention onto something else when he asks when he's leaving, or he starts to feel sorry for himself, saying that he's one of them. You know, it is very sad. Of course he's going to feel sorry for himself. Who wouldn't? So you can just try to basically get his mind on something else, get him excited about something else, maybe bring up a memory, maybe bring up something that's happening with your kids if you have kids, or another family member or some friends. Now, that could also not be a good idea because it could remind him that he's there and he's not seeing them. So there's fine lines to walk, and it's a balancing situation. And it's definitely not easy, and a lot of it will really depend on how you feel like he's going to respond. Because sometimes, you know, it may make him feel good if you acknowledge that something else is happening in the world. You know, maybe you can bring in some magazines, or there are people from different churches that will come and visit. Maybe you can set up through a church to have them come during meal times or other times and sit with him when you're not able to be there, and spread it out a little bit so that you know he's getting some one-on-one time with somebody. There's also, in our area, there's a lot of organizations that have pets. They'll bring dogs. Usually it's dogs. Sometimes they have other animals that they'll bring, and have them come visit the residents. I know at my husband's place they would do that, and sometimes they would have groups that came and did some square dancing and clogging. Sometimes they had musicians come, churches came and sang and played the piano. Children's groups came and read books to them or brought them artwork that they did. You know, a lot can be done with volunteers. So I don't know if that's something that's happening at this dementia care unit or at this facility. Maybe you can suggest it to them and even organize it. Maybe they're so overwhelmed they don't have somebody on staff that organizes and plans out activities, and that could be something you and him sit and do together. You could ask him which things you would like for him to have come in to the facility and see if that's okay, and then organize it. It might be good for you guys to work on together and make him feel like he's a part of it. So I'm not really sure I have given you the answer you're looking for, Tina, because I'm not sure there is really a true, really good answer for you. I'm hoping that this is helping you maybe think outside of the box and come up with some ideas to help him and in turn help you, because I'm sure every time that he asks you that on your way home, it's really, really sad for you as well, and I'm really sorry about that for you. You can also, as I've mentioned before, you can talk to his doctor or even a counselor. I would strongly suggest a counselor for you. I liken going through this scenario that you and so many others are going through to post-traumatic stress syndrome, because you are going to replay these conversations over and over in your head and beat yourself up and feel guilty. And I strongly suggest that either you talk to your pastor or a counselor who deals with grief, especially anticipatory grief where the person's still living, but they have some kind of sickness like dementia where there is no cure. So I strongly suggest finding somebody for you to talk to give you some support so that when you go and visit him, you will mentally be ready and able to help him with these questions in the way that he's feeling as well.
Karen, I think that was great. And, it seemed like Tina was really looking for any suggestions, and I think you gave some great ones there. I know that we only have about 5 minutes left, and I know you were just talking about, all the emotions that come with caregiving and the anticipatory grief. And I heard somebody say someone with Alzheimer's dies twice. You know, they um, they die, meaning their old personality kind of goes away, then their physical death. And Karen, you might have even been there with me. We were at a conference together, and we heard somebody say that. I thought that was um, an interesting way to think about it. And so I think the emotions of caregiving are so broad. You have the sad, the grief, but you have the happy times and the memories. And we've talked about this on previous chats. Sometimes you just have to laugh when things are funny because it just helps. And so there's all these emotions going on. And one thing that's really hard to think about is that um, there's no cure for Alzheimer's or dementia. So the end result is the person will pass away. Maybe it's from Alzheimer's, maybe it's a complication of Alzheimer's. And so I don't mean to end on a sad note, but we did have a question from Nancy. She asked, what's the best way and the best time to make funeral arrangements when your loved one can no longer participate in that? So again, I didn't mean to bring us down towards the end, but I think that I know in the families I work with, I tell them it's never too early to start having those conversations. But wanted to get your thoughts on that, Karen.
Oh, yes. And Nancy, thank you for bringing this up, even though it is a downer, and we don't want to end right here at the holidays as downer. So let me try to put a little bit of a positive spin on it for everybody. There are just a few things in our life that we are sure of, and everybody's heard the saying, and definitely one of them is that we're all not going to live forever. Nobody has in the past, and nobody, it seems like, is going to anytime soon. So, Nancy, the one thing you can do for yourself and for your loved one is go ahead and start working on it. Even if they can't participate on it now, maybe they'll have a good day that they can help you with some stuff. But if not, give yourself this time to start writing the obituary, visit a funeral home or two to get yourself some different pricing because not all of them are the same, and find the one that you're the most comfortable dealing with. It's just like anything else. It's about relationships as well as how they're going to care for your loved one once they're passed. Deciding where you want to have the burial, if they are getting a burial or if they're going to get cremated. They have paperwork at funeral homes, and they have all of these questions there that you can just go ahead and start working your way through in the time frame that works best for you, because there is so much stress on you once they actually pass, even if they're sick. Jim was really sick. We'd already called in hospice. And one of the hardest things I did was write that crazy obituary. It took me days. I had migraines. It was so stressful. And I was kicking myself. I was like, why in the world did I not do this before I knew it was coming? Why didn't I do it? Or why didn't I have Jim do it? Which, that's a whole nother story, because I did ask him to do it a long time ago, but he was in a little bit of denial, just like men sometimes can be. Whoops, did I say that out loud? And so then, it didn't get done, so it fell on me. So, this is a time to ask for help as well. Do you have any siblings that can help you, even close friends that maybe have gone down this path before and can help you decide if you want to have the service at the funeral home or at a church or somewhere else, and who you want to be the speakers or what music you want there. Those are all things you can just go ahead and start thinking about now so that there's not so much pressure later. And for Jim, we made it a celebration. We made it not necessarily a going home, but we made it a celebration of his life because a lot of people that ended up attending really didn't know Jim that well. They knew us from our advocacy with Alzheimer's and from the kids' sports teams and from schools and things like that. And because he'd been sick for so long, they really didn't have a lot to do with Jim before he was sick. And so it was really nice. We focused on his life and what a great dad he was and how athletic he was and how funny he was. And, you know, one of the things that really helped was I started going back through old photos and thinking about times that Jim and I had that were happy times, not just, the last few months of his life that were so sad, but, recalling, why did we fall in love in the first place? Looking at pictures of our first home and some of the trips we had taken. So there's ways to try to put a positive spin, and you can recall those wonderful memories and really hold on to them because, that's part of your relationship and that's part of your life with them, and trying to, focus on that instead of just how sad it is that they're, for lack of a better word, and I apologize for being a downer, that they're dying. And I used to just sit with Jim sometimes and I would tell him I was so sorry that this was happening to him. And he would just look at me and say it was okay, it wasn't my fault. And so sometimes I hold on to that. It's not my fault, but I did the best I could by him. So I'm trying to keep it light, Lakelyn, and I hope I did. I
You did a
did.
great job, Karen.
So I do want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas or a Happy Hanukkah or whatever it is that you celebrate, or maybe you don't celebrate, or maybe you just don't feel like celebrating this year. I know, honestly, I haven't been in the most festive mood, obviously, because this is our first Christmas without Jim, but I do hope that each one of you can find something to treasure and to be thankful for, because we all do have something to be thankful for, even in the hardest of times. And I want you all to know I'm so thankful for you continuing to support our family and each other through all of this, because we are one big community in the Alzheimer's community.
Karen, I think you summed it up so well. And I want to thank you for being on here today with me, sharing your family's experience. I think we all learned a lot, especially about the balance between independence and safety, and then topics far beyond that. So, wishing you and your family a happy Thanksgiving. And we do have some resources there on the screen for you. We mentioned a few of those throughout today's live chat. And again, this will be recorded and sent out to you via email. So if you enjoyed the chat, want to forward it on, or go back and listen to a part of it again later, you will have that opportunity. So again, Karen, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us today. And we will have a live chat in January. So we're going to have one next month. So you will get more information about that coming to your inbox shortly. So have a great holiday season, a happy new year, and we'll see you all in 2017. Karen, take care. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. You too, Lakeland.
Bye.